They thought I was just another customer in a red hat, easily dismissed and despised. They had no idea the man they were disrespecting was the CEO who owned every single coffee shop they worked for. The worn denim of my jeans felt comfortable, a welcome change from the starched collars and tailored suits that had become my daily uniform. The flannel shirt was soft, faded from 100 washes, and the boots on my feet were scuffed and broken in. On my head, I wore a simple red baseball cap, with 4 white letters stitched across the front. It was my disguise, my invisibility cloak. You see, about once a quarter, I like to visit one of my establishments unannounced. I'm Frank Morrison, and I own the Daily Grind, the largest and fastest-growing coffee shop chain in the country. But today, I wasn't the CEO. I was just Frank, a middle-aged guy looking for a decent cup of coffee. The bell above the door chimed softly as I stepped inside the Des Moines location. A familiar, comforting aroma of roasted beans and freshly baked pastries filled the air. It was a smell I'd worked my entire life to perfect, and a wave of quiet pride washed over me. The place was busy, the low hum of conversation punctuated by the hiss of the espresso machine and the clatter of ceramic mugs. This was what I'd built, a place for people to connect, to relax, to start their day. I found a small table in the corner, one with a perfect view of the entire operation, from the counter to the kitchen pass-through. A young woman with streaks of purple in her dark hair and a silver ring in her nose approached my table. Her eyes flickered over my flannel shirt, my work-worn hands, and then landed on my hat. I saw it instantly, the subtle shift in her expression. Her smile, which had been plastered on for the college kids at the next table, vanished. Her posture stiffened. Her name tag, pinned crookedly to her black apron, read, Chloe. "What do you want?" she asked. Her tone wasn't just flat. It was laced with a barely concealed disdain. There was no hello, no welcome to the daily grind. I've dealt with every kind of employee imaginable over the 30 years I've been in this business. The cheerful ones, the grumpy ones, the ones who are just there for a paycheck. I'm a patient man. I believe in second chances. "Just a black coffee, please," I said, giving her a polite, neutral smile. She scoffed, a tiny, almost inaudible sound, and turned on her heel without another word. I watched her walk over to the barista station. She grabbed a clean, white mug, then leaned over to say something to the barista, a young man with a man bun who was expertly steaming milk. She gestured with her head in my direction. He glanced over at me, and they both shared a smirk. My smile faded. This wasn't just a grumpy employee having a bad day. This was personal. This was a judgment. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers as I observed. This is why I do this. To see the reality, not the polished performance managers put on when they know the owner is coming. I watched Chloe pour the coffee from the large thermal carafe. It was a simple, mundane action. But then she did something else. She thought she was being clever. She turned her back to the main floor, shielding her actions with her body. But my corner table had a unique advantage. The large, gleaming chrome espresso machine behind the counter was polished to a mirror shine. And in its reflection, I saw everything. I saw her lean forward, her purple-streaked hair falling over her face. I saw her glance back over her shoulder, a look of pure, unadulterated contempt in her eyes. And then I saw her purse her lips and spit directly into the mug. It wasn't a small, accidental thing. It was a deliberate, vile act of disrespect. She wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, her face twisting into a smug little grin, convinced she had gotten away with it. My blood ran cold. It wasn't just the disgust, which was immense. It was a profound sense of violation. A violation of trust, of basic human decency, and of everything I had tried to build my company's reputation on. Quality, respect, community, all of it, flushed away in a single, disgusting act by an employee who had no idea who I was. She picked up the mug, her expression carefully schooling itself back into one of bored indifference. She walked back towards my table, the contaminated coffee sloshing gently in the cup. The world seemed to move in slow motion. Every step she took was a drumbeat counting down to a confrontation she couldn't possibly anticipate. She had no idea that the man in the red hat she so clearly despised wasn't just a customer. He was the man who signed her paychecks, the man who owned the very ground she was standing on. She placed the mug down on my table with a sharp clink, a little too hard. A bit of the dark liquid splashed onto the saucer. "Here you go," she said, her voice dripping with a satisfaction she couldn't quite hide. She started to turn away, ready to move on to her next table, leaving me with her disgusting little secret. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't yell or cause a scene. I simply said her name, my voice low and steady, cutting through the cafe's ambient noise like a surgeon's scalpel. Chloe. She stopped, turning back with an impatient look on her face. Yeah? I looked from the coffee, then up to her eyes, holding her gaze. I let the silence stretch for a beat, watching the impatience in her eyes begin to curdle into confusion. Then a flicker of unease. I slowly reached into my pocket, not for my wallet, but for my phone. I unlocked it, my thumb hovering over my contacts. Get your manager, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. I didn't touch the cup. I just stared at her. No, on second thought, don't bother with the shift supervisor. I want you to go into the back office and call David Miller. He's the regional vice president of operations. Tell him Frank Morrison is at his Des Moines location and that we have a serious immediate problem that he needs to get down here and handle personally. I paused, letting the names sink in. And tell him the problem is you. For a moment, Chloe just stared at me, her mouth slightly agape. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, followed by a derisive sneer. She actually laughed. It was a short, sharp, ugly sound. Right, Frank Morrison, and I'm the Queen of England. Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but I've got other tables. If you're done being a creep, I'm going to get back to work. She turned to leave again, dismissing me as some delusional old man. I wouldn't do that, I said, my voice still quiet. But now it held a cold edge that made her freeze mid-stride, because your next action will determine whether you leave here today merely unemployed, or unemployed and in handcuffs. That got the attention of the surrounding tables. Conversations faltered. People started looking over, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. A young man wearing a backwards baseball cap and an expensive-looking fleece vest swaggered over. His name tag read, Kevin, manager. Is there a problem here, sir? He asked, puffing out his chest. He was trying for authoritative, but his eyes darted around nervously. He clearly didn't like confrontations. Yes, Kevin, there is a problem, I said, not taking my eyes off Chloe, who was now looking pale. A very serious one. Your employee, Chloe, just assaulted a customer, me, by spitting in my coffee. Which, I might add, is a felony in this state. Kevin's jaw tightened. He glanced at Chloe, who shook her head frantically. He's lying. I didn't do anything. He's just mad about, I don't know, the prices. He's trying to get a free meal. A free coffee, you mean? I corrected gently. This one, specifically. I nudged the mug with my finger but didn't touch it. Sir, Kevin said, turning back to me, his voice taking on a patronizing tone. Those are extremely serious allegations. We take customer service very seriously here at the Daily Grind, but we also have to protect our staff from baseless accusations. Perhaps you were mistaken about what you saw. I finally broke my gaze from Chloe and looked at Kevin. He was young, probably mid-20s, trying to play the part of the man in charge. He had no idea he was a lamb trying to lecture a lion. Mistaken. Oh, I'm not mistaken, Kevin. I have a PhD in applied physics. My observation skills are quite acute. I saw it in the reflection of that brand-new La Marzocco Linea PB espresso machine behind your counter. The one that was installed last Tuesday after I personally approved the $500,000 equipment upgrade for this district. I also imagine the incident is perfectly captured on the high-definition footage from security camera number 3, pointed directly at the service well. The color drained from Kevin's face. The specific model of the machine, the exact day of installation. Those weren't things a random customer would know. Chloe looked like she was about to be sick. Her bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by a raw, naked panic. Now, I continued, pulling out my phone again. I gave Chloe a simple instruction. She failed to follow it. So, I'll handle it myself. I navigated to my contacts and pressed the call button for David Miller, VP Ops, making sure to hit the speakerphone icon. The cafe was now deathly silent. Every customer was watching, listening. The phone rang once. A brisk professional voice answered. David Miller. David, it's Frank. The change on the other end of the line was instantaneous. The briskness vanished, replaced by a tone of near reverential deference. Mr. Morrison, sir, to what do I owe the pleasure? I hope everything is all right. I saw Kevin's knees physically buckle. He grabbed the back of a nearby chair to steady himself. Chloe just stood there, swaying slightly, her eyes wide with sheer terror. The truth, in all its horrifying glory, was dawning on them. No, David. Everything is not all right, I said, my voice hard as granite. I'm at your Des Moines location on Elm Street, and I have a personnel issue that has escalated into a potential public health crisis and a criminal matter. Sir? I don't understand, David stammered on the other end of the line. I looked directly at Chloe, whose entire body was now trembling. Your employee, Chloe, just intentionally contaminated my drink. She spat in my coffee because she didn't like the hat I was wearing. The collective gasp from the other patrons was audible. There was a moment of stunned silence on the phone, then a string of muffled curses. I'm on my way, sir. I'm an hour out, but I'll be there in 45. I'm so sorry. This is unacceptable. It's... You'll be here in 30, David, I interrupted, and you'll bring the district manager with you. In the meantime, you are to place both Chloe and the shift manager, Kevin, on immediate unpaid administrative leave. Lock them out of the payroll system right now, from your phone. They are not to touch another piece of company property. I paused, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. Kevin looked like he might faint. But that's not all, David, I said, my voice dropping to a low, lethal calm. I want you to call Brenda in legal. Tell her to pull the standard termination paperwork, but also to begin drafting a criminal complaint with the Des Moines Police Department. Assault, food tampering. Use the most severe charges possible. Tell her the victim is me, and the evidence is on our own security cameras. We are making an example of this. I want her to understand that her life is about to change, permanently. The silence that followed my call was thick and suffocating. Every eye in the cafe was locked on our little tableau of judgment. Kevin, the manager, was leaning heavily against the chair, his face the color of spoiled milk. Chloe was frozen, tears silently streaming down her cheeks, leaving mascara tracks on her pale skin. The smug contempt from minutes earlier was gone, replaced by the dawning, horrific understanding of the magnitude of her mistake. She hadn't just disrespected a customer, she had spat in the face of the man who held her entire future in his hands. Sir, Mr. Morrison, please, Kevin stammered, finally finding his voice. It was a pathetic, reedy sound. It was a mistake, a horrible, stupid mistake. We can fix this. A refund? A gift card for a year's worth of coffee. I turned my gaze on him, and he flinched as if I'd physically struck him. A mistake? I repeated, my voice dangerously soft. No, Kevin. A mistake is putting too much sugar in a latte. A mistake is forgetting a customer's order. What she did was a calculated act of malice. And what you did, I said, my voice hardening, was try to cover it up. You called me a liar. You chose to protect an employee who had just committed a criminal act over a customer you believed to be just some random guy off the street. You failed at the most fundamental aspect of your job. Judgment. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, but no words came out. I turned my attention back to Chloe. The tears were coming faster now, accompanied by ragged, choked sobs. I'm sorry, she whispered, the words barely audible. I'm so sorry. I was just having a bad day. I saw the hat and I just got so angry. I didn't think. Please don't ruin my life. I'm a student. I need this job. The other patrons were listening intently. A woman at a nearby table shook her head in disgust. A man in a business suit was filming the whole thing on his phone. I knew this would be on the internet within the hour. Good. Let it be a lesson. You're a student? I asked, my tone deceptively conversational. She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. What are you studying? Political science, she stammered. I almost laughed. The irony was too rich. Political science. You have strong convictions, then. Strong enough to assault someone who you believe holds different ones. You felt so morally superior, so righteous in your hatred for what this simple red hat represents to you, that you felt it gave you the right to debase and humiliate another human being. You weren't having a bad day, Chloe. You were indulging in bigotry, the very thing I'm sure you and your political science professors claim to stand against. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so only she and Kevin could hear. Let me tell you something about this hat. My grandfather, a farmer from Kansas, wore one like it every day of his life. He worked 60-hour weeks in the dirt to put my father through college. My father, who then started a small coffee roasting business in his garage, wore one just like it while he worked 100-hour weeks to build the foundation of this company. This company that pays your tuition. I wear this hat, not as a political statement, but to remember them. To remember the calloused, hard-working hands that built everything you see around you. I let that sink in. Her sobs became more frantic. She was finally seeing me not as a political symbol, but as a person. It was too little, far too late. You didn't just spit in my coffee, Chloe, I continued, my voice returning to its normal volume. You spat on their memory. You spat on every single person in this company who works hard, treats people with respect, and takes pride in their job. People whose livelihoods depend on the reputation you tried to tarnish today. You think your political outrage gives you a free pass for basic human decency? That's not conviction. That's arrogance. And arrogance has a price. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. The entire cafe fell silent again. You're both fired, effective immediately. Security will be here shortly to escort you off the premises. Your final paychecks will be mailed to you, minus any deductions for legal fees the company incurs as a result of your actions. I looked at Kevin. Hand me your keys. He fumbled at his belt loop, his hands shaking so badly he could barely unclip the keyring. He held them out to me, avoiding my eyes. I took them. I then walked behind the counter. The other employees, the barista with the man bun and a young girl who looked like she was still in high school, stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. I ignored them for a moment and addressed the entire cafe. "Good morning, everyone," I said, my voice calm and clear. "My name is Frank Morrison. I'm the owner of the Daily Grind. I want to apologize for the unacceptable scene you've just witnessed. This is not what we stand for. For the next hour, everything in this store, every coffee, every pastry, everything is on the house. Please, enjoy your morning, and know that we will handle this situation with the gravity it deserves." A smattering of applause broke out. The man who had been filming gave me a thumbs up. I gave a curt nod, and then turned my attention to the petrified staff. "You," I said, pointing to the barista. "What's your name?" "T. Tyler, sir," he squeaked. "Tyler, you saw what she did. You smirked. You were complicit. You have 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't fire you right here, right now." Tyler's face went white. He opened his mouth, but before he could say a word, Chloe, in a last desperate act of self-preservation, shrieked, "It wasn't just me. He does it too. Tyler. He told me he does it all the time to customers he doesn't like. He calls it adding a special ingredient." My head snapped toward Tyler. His face, which had been pale with fear, now flushed a deep, guilty crimson. He looked at Chloe with pure, unadulterated hatred, the look of a co-conspirator who had just been thrown under the bus. He started shaking his head, his man bun quivering with the motion. No, she's lying. She's just trying to take me down with her," he sputtered, his voice cracking. "I never did anything. I swear." "She's lying?" I asked, my voice dangerously soft. I took a slow step towards him, and he instinctively took a step back, bumping into the gleaming espresso machine. "So, you're telling me that a woman who just had her entire world implode, who is facing unemployment and criminal charges, whose first instinct was to deny everything, has now suddenly decided to invent a detailed, specific, and frankly believable lie about you?" I let the question hang in the air, the logic of it undeniable. "It doesn't sound like a lie, Tyler. It sounds like desperation. And desperate people often tell the truth." I looked past him, at the third employee, the young girl who looked no older than 17. Her name tag read, Jessica. She was standing by the pastry case, wringing her hands in her apron, her eyes wide as dinner plates. She looked like a frightened deer, caught in the headlights of an oncoming truck. "Jessica," I said, and she jumped. "You work with these two every day. Look me in the eye and tell me you've never seen or heard of anything like this happening before today. Tell me you've never heard Tyler talk about adding a special ingredient to a customer's order." Jessica's bottom lip trembled. She glanced nervously at Tyler, who shot her a look that was pure poison. It was a clear, silent threat. I saw it. Everyone saw it. That look told me everything I needed to know. Jessica looked back at me, tears welling in her eyes, and gave an almost imperceptible shake of her head. She was too terrified to speak, but her silence was a confession. A low murmur rippled through the customers, who were still watching the drama unfold. The man with the phone was still recording, his lens now focused on the terrified barista. "I see," I said, my voice turning to ice. I felt a rage building inside me, a cold, hard fury, unlike anything I had felt in years. This wasn't a single rotten apple. This was a sickness, a culture of contempt that had been allowed to fester right under my nose. Kevin, the spineless manager, had clearly fostered an environment where this behavior was, if not encouraged, then at least tolerated. "So this is what my company has become in this town," I said, my voice rising, no longer quiet but ringing with authority. I wasn't just talking to the employees anymore. I was addressing the entire store, the entire world that would soon see this video. A place where employees feel they have the right to secretly assault customers based on their appearance, their beliefs, the hat they wear. A place where they laugh about it behind the counter, where managers look the other way. I pointed a finger at Tyler. "You are a disgrace to this uniform. You're fired. Get your things. Now." Then I pointed at the shell-shocked Kevin. You're not just fired. I'm going to make a personal mission out of ensuring you never work in a management position in the food service industry again. Your negligence put the public at risk. Finally, I looked at Chloe, who was sobbing uncontrollably now. And you were the spark. I hope your political science degree serves you well, because you're going to need a new career path, one that doesn't involve serving other human beings. The front door chimed, and 2 men in sharp suits hurried in, their eyes scanning the room until they found me. David Miller, my VP of Operations, and a man I recognized as the district manager, a guy named Henderson. David's face was ashen. "Frank, Mr. Morrison," David said, rushing over. "I am so sorry. I came as fast as I could. We've locked them out of the system. Legal is on the line." Good," I said, not taking my eyes off the 3 disgraced employees. "David, I want this store shut down, effective immediately." David's jaw dropped. "Sir, shut it down? For how long?" "Indefinitely," I stated flatly. "We're not just firing these 3. We're cleaning house. I want every single employee at this location terminated. Everyone. I don't care if they were involved or not. The culture here is poisoned to the root. We will close the doors, bring in a corporate deep cleaning crew, and when we are ready, we will restaff from scratch with people who understand what the words service and respect actually mean." The weight of my decision settled over the room. Firing 3 people was one thing. Closing an entire profitable store and firing its whole staff was a corporate earthquake. Jessica, the young, terrified girl, let out a small cry. "But I didn't do anything," she pleaded. "I need this job. I'm saving for college." I finally turned to her, and for the first time my expression softened slightly. "I know you didn't, Jessica, and I saw the look he gave you. I know you were scared. That's why you're the only one who isn't being fired." I paused, letting her absorb the relief. "In fact, I'm promoting you. When this store reopens, you're the new shift manager. I'm going to pay for your management training myself, because you, in your silence, showed more integrity than these 2 did in all their pathetic lies." Her jaw dropped, a look of utter disbelief on her face. Before anyone could react to this new bombshell, I turned to my VP. "David, get them out of here, and call the police. I want to press charges, against both of them." David nodded, pulling out his phone. Chloe let out a final, desperate wail as Henderson began to herd her and Tyler towards the back office. It was over. The immediate crisis was handled. But as I stood there, amidst the wreckage of my own store, I looked down at the coffee mug that had started it all. The offensive red hat was still on my head. I thought about the sickness I had just uncovered, the casual hatred hidden just beneath the surface, and I realized this wasn't just about one store in Des Moines. This was a symptom of a much larger disease, and I, Frank Morrison, was in a unique position to do something about it. My phone buzzed. It was a notification from a news app. The video was already going viral. Title: MAGA hat-wearing CEO shuts down his own coffee shop after waitress spits in his drink. The story was breaking, and the world was watching, and I knew exactly what my next move had to be. It was a wild, audacious, and incredibly risky idea. It could either save my company or burn it to the ground. The next 48 hours were a blur of damage control, corporate restructuring, and media frenzy. The video, as I predicted, exploded. It was on every news channel, every blog, every social media feed. Pundits on the left decried my hat and my draconian decision to fire an entire staff. Pundits on the right hailed me as a hero of the common man, a business owner finally standing up to the woke mob. They were both wrong. They were all missing the point. This wasn't about politics. It was about decency. I ignored the noise. While my PR team was working overtime, I was setting my plan in motion. David Miller and I holed up in a hotel conference room, transforming it into a war room. The first order of business was dealing with Chloe and Tyler. True to my word, we pressed charges. The police, armed with our pristine HD security footage, arrested them both. Their mugshots were plastered everywhere, a stark and permanent consequence of their actions. Kevin, the manager, was fired for cause, and our legal team sent a letter to his home address informing him that we would be actively opposing any unemployment claim he filed due to gross negligence. Then came the bigger, bolder move. I called an emergency meeting of the entire board of directors and every regional vice president. Via a company-wide video conference, I laid it all out. The incident in Des Moines was not an isolated event, I said, my voice steady, my gaze fixed on the camera lens. It was a symptom of a cancer that has infected not just our company, but our society. A cancer of contempt. We've forgotten how to talk to each other. We've forgotten how to see the human being on the other side of the disagreement. We at the Daily Grind are in a unique position. We are one of the few places left where people from all walks of life, all political persuasions, still come together every single day. We are the new town square, and we have a responsibility to be better. I outlined my plan. It was called the Common Ground Initiative. First, I was immediately and permanently closing the Des Moines location. It would not be reopened, the site would be sold, and the proceeds, along with a matching donation from my personal family foundation, would be used to establish a new vocational training program in the city, focused on customer service and conflict resolution skills, open to anyone, free of charge. We weren't just leaving, we were trying to heal the wound we discovered. Second, I announced a company-wide shutdown for one full day the following Monday. Every single one of our nearly 2,000 locations would close. Every one of our 30,000 employees would be paid for the day, on one condition. They had to attend a mandatory all-day training seminar. It wasn't going to be a boring HR video. I hired the best de-escalation and communication experts in the country. The curriculum was about one thing: radical respect. The training would teach our employees how to serve a person they vehemently disagreed with, not just with a fake smile, but with genuine professional dignity. How to see the customer, not the political symbol. Third, and this was the part that made the board members' blood run cold, I announced a new marketing campaign. It was simple: a picture of 2 coffee cups, one black, one white, side by side. The slogan underneath read, "Coffee is bitter, people shouldn't be. Let's find our common ground." We were going to lean into the controversy, not run from it. We were taking a stand, not for a political party, but for the simple, radical idea of treating each other like human beings. The fallout was immediate. Wall Street panicked. Our stock price took a nosedive. The cost of shutting down for a day, combined with the new training initiatives, was projected to cost us tens of millions of dollars in the short term. Pundits called me a fool, a reckless CEO playing with fire. But then something amazing happened. The story began to shift. It was no longer about a waitress spitting in coffee. It was about a company trying, in its own small way, to fix something that was broken. Letters and emails began pouring in, thousands of them, from conservatives who felt seen and respected, from liberals who, while they may not have liked my hat, admired the principle of standing up for civility. We heard from families who were politically divided, who told us the Daily Grind was the one neutral place they could still meet. The day of the shutdown arrived. Our stores were dark. Our employees were in training centers, hotel ballrooms, and conference halls across the country. I made a surprise appearance at the one in Kansas City, not far from where my grandfather's farm used to be. I stood before 500 baristas, managers, and shift supervisors, and I told them my story. I told them about my father, about the values this company was built on. I told them that a cup of coffee was never just a cup of coffee. It was an opportunity for connection, a small moment of peace in a chaotic world. I told them their job was more important than they could ever imagine. When we reopened on Tuesday morning, we had no idea what to expect. Would the boycotts from the fringes of both sides cripple us? Had I made a colossal, career-ending mistake? I went to a location near my home, not in disguise this time. I walked in wearing my suit. The place was packed. The line was out the door. And it was the most diverse crowd I had ever seen in one of my stores. People in suits, people in work boots, people with pink hair and nose rings, people in MAGA hats. They were all there, talking, laughing, ordering coffee. A young barista with a sleeve of tattoos saw me, and her eyes widened. She leaned into her microphone. "Hey everyone," she said, her voice amplified through the store's speakers. "Mr. Morrison is here." The whole store stopped and applauded. It was thunderous. It wasn't for me, the CEO. It was for the idea. The idea that maybe, just maybe, we could still find a way to share a cup of coffee together, regardless of what hat we were wearing. I looked at the long line, the bustling baristas working with a new sense of purpose, the community that had refused to be torn apart. Chloe's disgusting act of hatred had been meant to divide, to sow contempt. But in the end, it did the exact opposite. It forced us to look at who we were and who we wanted to be. It gave us a chance to rebuild, not just a single coffee shop, but a small piece of our common ground. And that was a foundation worth more than any stock price.